in a previous video that I did earlier this week, I asked everybody in the comments section, hey guys, do you know about this mechanic? It's one of the mechanics that a lot of people will see and think they understand and they actually don't understand it. That mechanic is Siphon. And Siphon is seen on a couple of characters. It's not like a broadly used mechanic, but it is used in a number of places and it's very important to those characters. Characters like Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, for example. Characters like Dr. Aphra. Characters like Darth Bane. These are good units, and being able to understand how that siphoning works is an important part of using them effectively, right? So here I'm going to try and teach you just a little bit about how it works on these characters so you can understand and be more informed, because knowledge is power. Good. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Galaxy of Heroes video with me, your bald-headed boy scribe. How the devil are we all doing? And welcome to your daily dose of swagger. Okay. One of the really interesting things, the really useful things about the change to the filter system that CG made recently is that you can actually just type stuff in. You can just type stuff in like Siphon, and you will find all the units that have Siphon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each unit and try to explain what Siphon is, all right? To best articulate how we're going to do this, I'm going to go straight into a battle in Arena with Supreme Leader Kylo Ren as our first target. So I'm going to articulate first the two different aspects. First, we've got ramping up the Siphon stacks, and then we've got actually siphoning a stat. So as we know, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren siphons Mastery. He gains Siphon stacks either on his basic or on his first special, but also with, Dark Side Ray. So if I use the first special, he's going to gain 40. That's because he gains 20 stacks of Siphon. You can see it over here. This is Siphon. He gains 20 stacks of Siphon when he uses that first ability, but all of his Siphon gains are doubled if he critically hits. So I'm just going to pass this ability back over. Okay? So that in isolation, this Siphon hasn't done anything yet. All this is a gradually ramping number that articulates how much of whatever stat we are siphoning is going to happen. So when we use this second special, where this siphoning actually happens, you see the Siphon Mastery over here, this is going to take a look at that number, 40% right now, and it is going to siphon whatever stat it does. This one does Mastery, for example. So right now, if I was to use this, I essentially would gain 40%, because that's, the percentage, the number of siphoning that I've got right now. I would gain 40% of my Mastery, okay? The second part of this is the target enemy. So in this case, I'm targeting Leia, right? The target enemy will lose 40% of their current Mastery. The problem is, of course, is that against raid bosses and Galactic Legends, this doesn't work. Okay, they do not lose that 40% in this instance, right? However, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren himself, he's always going to gain it. Those calculations are entirely independent, okay? So even if I'm using this on a target that cannot have that stat siphoned, he's still going to gain it. Try to separate the two. It's not a case of I'm looking at your Mastery and I'm taking 40%. It's not that at all. What's actually happening is I've got 40%. I've got 40 stacks of Siphon. I'm going to gain 40% of my current Mastery. You're going to lose 40% of your current Mastery. Those are all independent. Okay. So if I was to use this on Leia, I would still gain 40%. She wouldn't lose 40% because she's immune to it. If I was to use it on 3PO and Chewie, he's going to lose 40% of his Mastery. I'm going to gain 40% of mine because, he's not a Galactic Legend. So you always want to use it on a unit that you can siphon Mastery from, because it's going to make them less likely to hit, lose their max health, lose their damage, lose their crit damage, lose their crit chance, etc., whatever their Mastery happens to be. And I'm always going to gain. So this was a very deliberate design decision by CG to make sure that when you take them into raids, that they're still good in raids. When you use them versus Galactic Legends, you can still actually gain additional stats. People like Bane can still sap away max health or gain max health versus a Galactic Legend. He becomes more damaging, more survivable, but they maintain the integrity of the Galactic Legend. Okay, so I'm going to back out of this mission. There we go. When I use that ability, I've gained 40% of my current Mastery. I'm going to show you in his stats how that translates, all right? I'll show you in his stats how that translates. So if I was to go over to Supreme Leader Kylo Ren over here, mine is Relic 10, okay? Because mine is Relic 10, if we were to go over here into our stats and take a look at his mastery, you will see that he has got a mastery of 90. So in that instance, I had 40% or 40 stacks of Siphon. When we used that second special to Siphon, we are going to get 40% of 90, which is what, like, I don't know, 35? Give or take. I know I'm rounding here. Let's have a look. 90 times 0.4, 36. I was very close. I was one off, right? So we would gain 36 mastery, meaning our mastery now would be 126, right? And that then is going to ramp up our crit chance, crit damage, and damage. Our target in that instance was 3PO and Chewie. So if I was to look at 3PO and Chewie over here, we look at their mastery. Now mine's Relic 7. It's got a base mastery of 40, right? So they would lose 40, base mastery of 45, sorry. Times 0.4. They would lose 18. They would lose 18 of their mastery, which would decrease the accuracy, damage, and defense penetration. All right, so when we're using that, we're siphoning mastery. What we're not doing is looking at 3PO and Chewie and taking his accuracy, damage, and defense penetration and adding it to our own. No. We're increasing our mastery, which is increasing our relevant stats, and the opponent, in a completely separate calculation, is losing that same percentile of their mastery, which is then going to lower their stats. Okay? That's kind of mastery siphoning in a nutshell, but we can apply that to every single unit in the game that has got Siphon. Okay, so Bane, for example, his is on Essence of Dominance. He siphons maximum health. So if he's got 100 stacks, which he can do eventually, right? He is going to gain 100% of his max health. Isn't that nice? Isn't that wonderful? All right, because that's going to give him like 150,000 max health and all of his damage ramps based on that. The opponent would lose 100% of their max health. Now, it's only going to decrease 100% of their current max health and stuff like that, depending on the stacks of Siphon and all that sort of nonsense, but they're still completely independent, okay? Now, a lot of stats can go into the negatives. Some can't, all right? Max health, for example, can only ever go reduced down to 1. We've seen that happen. It just looks like one big health bar, right? But things like accuracy, which is, Bane's mastery up here, that can go into the negatives. So mastery can actually go down into the negatives. This is another interesting reason why those calculations were totally separate, because if you think about it, and this did actually happen back in the past, if you were to siphon someone's mastery whilst they were negative, right, you're technically absorbing negative mastery. So say you dropped someone and you brought their mastery down to negative 20. When you go to Siphon, you're going to lower your own mastery by negative 20. And you're going to keep lowering their mastery, right? Because your Siphon stacks are going up, which is how much percentile you absorb. So if you were actually going to be absorbing their mastery in that instance, you would effectively be lowering your stats. And this did actually happen to Supreme Leader Kylo Ren in the original initiation version of him. So you ended up hurting your own stats by it. That's why they had to separate the two things out, right? So they're individual calculations, right? So yeah, and that's kind of how it goes. It's as simple as that, guys. There are 3 steps essentially. 1, you build up your Siphon stacks, which dictates how much percentage of whatever stat you are doing. So Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, it's mastery, right? Bane, max health. Aphra, potency. Territory Wars, if you happen to have Death Trooper Peridius, his is crit damage. New Inquisitor Barriss, hers is crit damage. Who else can we think of that's got some form of Siphon? I'm losing it now. Jocasta Nu, max protection, right? So all of these things will happen in the same way. Stacks of Siphon, whatever stat to increase for yourself, and separately, whatever stat to decrease based on your target, right? They're all independent calculations, and they all work slightly differently. I think Slacker's is the most confusing. His is the most confusing because his has got almost like a 4th step, because every individual character has a mastery, and each mastery has a couple of stats that they increase or decrease, right? So his dynamically changes based on who he's attacking, right? Because if he was to use his swipe ability against someone like Bane, Bane has got accuracy as his mastery, so if I was to siphon Bane, eventually he wouldn't hit the side of a barn door, you know? Rey doesn't have siphon, but she has mastery increasing based on if she's got inspired and the enemy gains turn meter and stuff like that. And that works similarly to Kylo Ren's, but obviously it's not taking away from the enemy. And loads of units have got mastery ramping abilities, but they're not the same as Siphon. Okay, so Siphon, interesting mechanic all in all. I was going to talk through each individual case, but like the premise of how it works is exactly the same. All right, build up your stacks of Siphon. You increase your whatever stat it happens to be by those stacks of Siphon when you use the irrelevant ability, and then separately you decrease the targets. Even if you cannot decrease the target, you are still going to increase your own stats, okay? So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Also, I'm pretty sure it does work even if you miss. So for example, if you use Kylo Ren's swipe and someone evades, you are still going to gain those stats, okay? Good talk, good talk. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got some other mechanic that you're a little bit confused about and you want me to try and explain, I'll try my best. I will try my best. Let me know in the comments section down below. Make sure you do like the video, and I'll see you all in the very next video. Peace out, and may the Force be with you.